My first discussion question is, what was the story I wanted to tell and how is it different from the story that we know? I wanted to tell a story of Gallimard's declining mental health in prison through his obsession with song. In his mind, he thinks highly of himself, hence the suit, but in reality, he's struggling heavily with anxiety from his past. And to portray the anxiety and seeing one act one, I found textures on the shoes that I had, along with the jacket, and intertwine those textures with nervous movements. To accompany this obsessive feeling, all the shots where he's talking about his great life in prison, I used video of a dancer to portray his overwhelming thoughts. As for the old camera, I wanted to more clearly show Gallimard's obsession with the woman he never really knew through the film playing in the dark. By never really showing the dancer's facial features, I tried to resemble the opaque vision of the woman Gallimard loved. Gallimard would watch the film so many times that he would fall into a sense of euphoria, where in his mind he was captured by song. Scene 3, Act 3 enters the battlefield of those emotions that ended the first scene, except Gallimard thinks he's overcome all his problems and convinces himself that he's right about women, and always has been. Though unable to cope with these experiences and trauma, he prepares himself for death by walking further into the unknown. I wanted to use a slow shutter speed in a lot of these scenes to refer to the fact that we are in Gallimard's mind and that his thoughts are blurred together. Lastly, I thought it was important that Gallimard be alone for this scene as he's preparing to end his own life. My second question is, what did it feel like to play a character like Gallimard? And it was really intense, actually. After analyzing him enough, I felt like I could step into his shoes, and I think I did an okay job because when I was putting it together, I felt disgusted watching the character that I had played. Turning myself into a piece of shit was a very interesting experience. I was excited though because I was constantly looking forward to how I could improve each scene and Gallimard as a whole. My last question is, how did the final product turn out in comparison to the first illustrations? Um, for most of the indoor shots, I had a general idea of what I wanted it to look like. A lot of the shots I had in mind I ended up using, so that was a little bit easier than the outside scene. It was harder to put together after and to make it look cohesive as a story because I didn't know how the shots would align. For the outdoor scene, Act 3, Scene 3, I was a lot less organized. I had one goal, and that was to film myself walking up the mountain with intent. I had ideas for the techniques I wanted to incorporate, like the slow shutter I mentioned before, but for the composition, I arrived at the location and went with it. I think that the overall project turned out pretty well, and I think that there's a cohesive element to the story and also that there are many emotions that portray themselves in the film.